Please pray with me. Gracious God, may the meditations of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be a pleasing offering to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. One of the challenges of living in a so-called Christian nation is that it's hard to tell who is really a Christian and who just uses their Christianity to get ahead in this life. And we see that historically. Once the Roman Empire officially converted to Christianity, suddenly almost everybody wanted to advance in life was now a Christian. The leaders of the church in those days really struggled because they saw the watering down of the faith to accommodate expediency and politics and empire. And very quickly the church decided it was the emperor's job to spread Christianity through conquest. And that viewpoint has continued to our own time. But the truth is that the Christian message will never be very popular, or at least any time in the future, because it's a hard path to love everyone, including people that hate you. It's a hard path to forgive wrongs. It's a hard path to live according to Jesus' teachings of nonviolence. And it's a hard path to place your faith in God and not in some ideology or nation. It's a hard path to throw in your lot with this motley crew of people that we call the church. Now, our first reading is from Acts, and this relays the story of the martyrdom of Stephen. Stephen we had met just a few chapters before. He was appointed a deacon along with 6 others to ensure that food was equitably shared among the burgeoning Christian community. And then we are told that he's performing miracles and preaching powerfully. So to those of you who are deacons, we expect great things, especially our youngest and newest deacons. But that leads to conflict with the religious hierarchy in Jerusalem. The writer of Luke Acts really wants us to be thinking about Jesus here. You may have noticed quite a few parallels. Stephen is being likened to Jesus. He's even brought before the Sanhedrin and given a sham trial. And to complete the likeness, Stephen is dragged out into the street and stoned to death. But in dying, he prays to God that those who kill him be forgiven. Stephen, the first martyr, is like Jesus. And remember that martyr originally meant witness in Greek. And although we are all called to witness to what God is doing through Jesus Christ, we are not all called to die for our faith. But remember, Stephen wasn't a big wig in the church. He wasn't even one of the 12 disciples. But the Spirit equipped him for what was needed. The Spirit fashioned him into a powerful preacher, a valiant visionary, and a matchless witness. Our second reading, we continue our journey through 1 Peter. The author of 1 Peter is writing encouragement to a community that is struggling. A couple weeks ago, we talked about encouraging words, reminding the people what God has done for them. And in last week, we read the author's advice to keep your head down for the survival of the community. Survival by any means necessary, as one commentator put it. And today we read words to help build up the community, to form it into a unified people. It is a reminder that Jesus, the one rejected by the powerful, is the one who became the cornerstone of the new community of God. And that is such an important corrective for our time. It is a solid refutation of Christian nationalism. There has been only one Christian nation in the world, and that is the church. That doesn't stop politicians and rulers from trying to use the Christian label to legitimate their power and to marginalize non-Christian minorities. There has only ever been one Christian nation. That's the church. And it is drawn from people of all languages, ethnicities, cultures, and countries. To claim otherwise is dangerously misguided at best and idolatrous at worst. Nations are built on self-interest and exclusion, us versus them. But nothing could be farther from the gospel, which, as we know, is built on self-giving love and inclusion. As the church, that is what we model, the way of Jesus Christ. First and foremost, we are followers of Jesus Christ and part of his church. And then our gospel reading from John, which might seem a little bit out of place here, because after all, we are in the midst of Easter, right? We're wearing white, we're celebrating, it's springtime, everything's coming back to life after our long, dreary, oh no, that was Iowa, sorry, after our short winter. But our reading starts with, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." So here we have this passage from John 14 that harkens back to before Easter, before the crucifixion even. This is what's called Jesus' farewell discourse. Do not let your hearts be troubled. We tend to see here a command to individuals to not let yourselves be upset. But as Laura Holmes points out, that although the word your, as in your hearts, is plural, heart is actually singular in the Greek here. The sense is that the community has but one heart among them. And the troubled heart is because they have it backwards, because Jesus is not really gone. But second, there's another textual difficulty here that Holmes also points out, because when Jesus tells his disciples, "You know the way to the place where I am going," well, the Greek doesn't have the word place in there. Once again, Jesus in the Gospel of John, and as we know this, the Gospel of John loves to do this, Jesus uses words with double meanings, and the disciples invariably pick up the wrong one. Just like Nicodemus did when Jesus said, "You must be born from above." Oh, well, Nicodemus heard it by the other meaning, which of course was very confusing to him. But inserting the word place here creates a misunderstanding. Holmes argues that a better translation, albeit clunky in English, would be, "And where I am going, you know the way." And the disciples know the way, because Jesus is both the way and the destination. Jesus tells them that they know more than they realize. His words here are intended to bring comfort. Jesus is saying, hard times will come, but I am always with you. And you know this. Or as we might say in the idiom of this time, you got this. Because even though we are in the season of Easter, even though we are in springtime when life is renewing itself, even though we are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ, difficult times are unavoidable. Hardships will come. No one is immune to suffering. We are all called to witness to the good news of God's love revealed in Jesus Christ. And some of us may pay the ultimate price for living out that faith. And that's why we must pull together as the church to be renewed, to be strengthened, to remind ourselves of our bond with each other and with God. And at the same time, Jesus Christ is always with us. And that is the greatest comfort of all, because knowing Jesus is knowing God. As one theologian, who unfortunately I could not remember his name or her name, and sadly AI failed me in my attempt to find out, the theologian said, God wears the face of Jesus. God wears the face of Jesus. And in a world where many would try to use Jesus to justify a nationalism or militarism or bigotry and outright cruelty, we know that that is not Jesus, and therefore that is not God. Faith means trust, and that is how you orient your life. Do you live in such a way that shows you that you trust in God? Or do you live in such a way that you trust in wealth or power or reputation or even comfort? Because we are to follow Jesus' example. Jesus' example of building community, of loving and caring for everybody, and recognizing the kinship with all the people of the earth. Here at UCC, we like to see ourselves as a big tent, a place of inclusion, a place where all are welcome. And we know that God is known to us in the person of Jesus Christ, that humble man who chose to die out of love rather than to live out of hatred. That is whose face God has. God is always with us. The way will be hard, but God is always with us. Our faith will challenge us, push us to put ourselves at risk. But God is always with us. Knowing Jesus is knowing God. Let us live accordingly.